Do I want to get a what? A cot? Are you tired? Is that why you need a cot? No, absolutely not. All right, my friends, I have the distinct pleasure of not announcing Senator Booker, but announcing Lou Magazzu. Lou, come to the stage. Lou Magazzu, a wonderful friend of this industry, a great lawyer, a hell of a guy, a great New Jersey citizen, a great American citizen. Why not? Lou is joined by the wonderful, the one and only Senator Cory Booker. Please come to the stage. Let's give them both a round of applause. Wonderful. Your mics are in your chairs, gentlemen.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is the long and short of it, obviously, with me and the senator. But let me first say a few words about my dear friend, Cory Booker, and I'll make them brief so that we can get into the substance of having him here. But I actually became aware of him around 2001 when he was a city councilman in the city of Newark. I think he's finished one term, or was in the midst of one term, running against an incumbent mayor. And then, even then, I was able to see that there was something very special about this young man. And I was a county commissioner in Deep South Jersey and a county Democratic chairman of our county. So really I had no nexus with the city of Newark. But notwithstanding that, I reached out to a mutual friend that we had and I said, I think this Booker really is somebody special. I'd like to meet him and I want to help. And I did, not in any significant way, but I helped a little bit. And then we developed a friendship that I cherish. And he was not only an extraordinary mayor, and some of the things he did as mayor, I think really will be helpful in this industry, because he was able to represent an underrepresented constituency, people of color, people who lived below the poverty line. Actually, he lived in that community. And yet at the same time, bring Fortune 100 companies into the city of Newark to make investments of hundreds of millions of dollars, because he had the capacity, he had the heart to represent those who were not represented, but at the same time had the intellect to bring these big businesses in. And then fast forward, and he became a United States Senator and has done extraordinary things in the Senate. I was lying on my couch watching him, I guess in about the 12th hour or something like that of his 25 hours and 5 minutes, breaking the record of Strom Thurmond, to speak about the ills and the promise of this country. And I got off my couch and I said to my Susan, I said, I think I'm going to drive down. I want to watch him. I want to see what he's doing. I want to be there. I want him to see me. And I was blessed to spend the last 5 or 6 hours sitting at the balcony areas of the Senate to watch the great work the senator's done. I have, for the last couple of years, been trying to get the senator at a cannabis event for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted all of you and the leaders of this industry to know my friend, not from his eloquence, which is known throughout the nation, but to understand him, spend a few minutes to understand him, his brain, his heart, but also we're going to talk about some substantive issues and to make sure that everybody knows how close, how dedicated I am to him. I'm also on his finance committee, so I come with a bias, but I am also going to give him a couple of tough questions because I think that the industry is, as we've been talking about it all day, at a very important inflection point, one that I think ultimately we're going to come out better for. But Senator, first of all, welcome, and thank you to the Lane brothers for holding this, and welcome to Ignite It, Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much.
So I want to go right to banking.
Yeah.
And let's first understand that this is an industry.
Can I just have a rebuttal
Yes.
to your opening?
I was filibustering.
I'd like
Did you
to
notice?
reclaim my time. So look, I've been on a journey which I think is this a belief that as a guy who was very privileged in life, my parents, who came from very poor backgrounds, raised my brother and I in sort of affluent New Jersey suburbia. And as a black guy, we were the first black family to integrate this neighborhood. They literally had to get a white couple to pose as us when we moved in, my parents taught me a very simple truth. Like, my dad would say, don't walk around this house like you hit a triple. You were born on third base. And that I had an obligation with all the blessings that were given to find a way to continue to fight this story of America that is this effort in every generation to make a more perfect union. And I think that by the time I was a teenager and was being pulled over by police officers in ways that my white best friends were not, I began to see a justice system that was savagely unjust. And one of the areas that became a passion point for mine was what I felt was one of the greatest economic attacks on the wealth and well-being of Americans, which was the unequal treatment of laws around marijuana. I mean, when I was at Stanford, Oxford, Yale, I would see people using drugs without any consequence. But when I made the decision to move into the neighborhood I live in now, in the Central Ward of Newark, New Jersey, I saw the reality. The data you all know, blacks have no difference in whites in using marijuana or even selling marijuana, but are 4 times more likely to be arrested for it, convicted for it. And when you live in a community like mine, you realize that data point is not accurate or helpful, because if you control for income, affluent blacks have a very different experience in the kind of community that I am a part of now. So I've been a part of this sort of movement for a long time. And if you had told me when I first came to Washington, D.C., that I would be sitting in a room like this, I would have not thought it was possible. And so you all, in many ways, are part of a movement for me to make our nation live up to its ideals that we swear an oath to, that we will be a nation of liberty and justice for all. And we are still in a nation that has not lived up to those ideals. But the way I see this movement, and I know we're going to get into a policy-based discussion, but I see this as a moral urgency to have a system of equality of opportunity on the upside in terms of jobs, economic prosperity, but equality before the law as well. This movement sits squarely in the center of that larger movement for justice in our country. And so I'm very honored to be here and very excited about the progress we've made. But I will tell you this, we can't stop now. Our movement must grow, and we must have more people pushing and pulling this country to create not just a free market around this around cannabis, but really a system of regulation that it speaks to the best of who we are together, and not continuing to double down on the divisiveness, division, and injustices that have been so marked by the story of marijuana in our country now. Okay.
Love it.
All right.
And that's absolutely. So one of the social justice consequences, and there's many, as you've talked about, and we could spend literally hours to talk about the folks who literally are still serving time today for doing something that is now at least in 36 states, I guess, legal, whether it's for medical or adult use. But people talk about the banking bill, okay? And we're going to talk about it writ large and talk about the importance of it and your position on it. But it's not only about ensuring that businesses that are in business can use banks the way every other, in the cannabis business, that every other non-cannabis business can do. But even the people who are working for these businesses, many of them of color, many of them who might have been, in the market prior to legalization, they can't take advantage of using banks if, in fact, those national banks say, "Oh, wait a minute, you're working for a cannabis company." So there's a very real impact on regular folk. It's not only about the MSOs or about those folks who are in business, but there's an impact by not having the ability to bank. And maybe we can talk about what your thoughts are with respect to safe banking, safer banking, and how do we get to a place where businesses can bank, businesses can borrow from banks, and the people who work in the cannabis businesses have the ability to have bank accounts, which everyone else can in every other type of business. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're preaching to the converted here. You all know the savage injustice of being an entrepreneur, being willing to risk your capital like other entrepreneurs, having a dream, having a product that has a demand, a product that has not just a demand, but frankly, a righteous purpose. There are millions of Americans that are, whether they're suffering from insomnia, PTSD, seizures, anxiety disorders, and the like, that have a need for what people are putting forward. That's why there's medical marijuana laws on the state level. American public understands that and is overwhelmingly in favor of people being able to access these products. The first press conference I had when I got to Washington around this issue was with military veterans as well as with moms. In fact, I will never forget that this mother who came forward with her disabled daughter who had a seizure as we were holding the press conference, that she was made a marijuana refugee because she had to move out of the state that she was in because it didn't have progressive-leaning marijuana laws. And so here we all know what it means to not have access to the banking system, about how do you pay your employees, about how do you get access to credit, about the dangers of having to have a cash business where you are now really putting out your business, but you're also signaling to everybody, hey, we have a lot of cash in this place, come rob me. And so for states, so-called red and blue states, to be moving in this direction, but because the federal government is so far behind to put people in a crisis, has made me sort of part of that very small group 15 years ago, but now larger group in Congress of people who are trying to find a way to fix this. Now, I've gone through multiple Congresses where we had something akin to the banking laws. The last time we went through this, I thought we were going to land this plane. I thought we were going to deliver to the hundreds of businesses that have come to me and told me stories that are gut-wrenching. Like, I'm barely holding on to my license. I'm losing money every single day. I need you to pass this legislation so I can stay in business in the community in which I grew up, in the community that has suffered most from the broken criminal justice system and bad laws. But we couldn't land the plane because we didn't get enough Republicans to agree with Democrats that we should land this plane. So the safer banking law languished and failed in the last Congress, but it's got to get passed. And this industry and all of us who believe in these legal changes and the legislation that we need have got to be able to pressure Congress, knowing that we're in the right, knowing that we are representing the majority of Americans, knowing that there are people being put in economic hardship every day by the lack of action of Congress.
So, rescheduling or descheduling. Earlier, there were some folks up here who were talking who spoke about the president tweeting on Truth Social about his desire to reschedule. Do you have a sense of whether that's really going to happen? Do you have a sense of the ability of this Congress to work with the White House? And I know scheduling is an administrative, not congressional, but there are implications and regulatory implications and others where I think there would be congressional oversight. I know that this audience would be very interested in your thoughts about the likelihood of both some type of banking system, but also rescheduling, descheduling, something of that nature. And I understand we have to crawl before we walk, but we haven't been able to even crawl, really.
Yeah, well, look, justice is descheduling. We all know that. That's what the right thing to do, is to deschedule. But I will accept any progress over no progress. The idea that heroin and meth is the same as cannabis belies all science and reality. And so to have it Schedule 1, have it the same schedule as these much more severe drugs that we all know the consequences can be for our communities is absurd. And so I've heard that, I've been fighting. I think I might be the only person from the presidential debate stage. I still remember I was standing next to Joe Biden, and I said, Mr. Vice President, I've looked at your marijuana laws that you're putting forward in your campaign platform, and I have to say respectfully, I think whoever wrote that platform plank must have been high when they did it, because everybody in the auditorium laughed. My mom didn't. She's like, do not accuse the Vice President of the United States of being high when he wrote his policy. My mom was not pleased. But I have been consistently fighting this battle for a long time, and I don't care Republican or Democrat. By the way, I think most of the problems in this country, the lie that we tell is that they're left-right. No, they're not. We agree on so much more than we disagree with. The savagery of our tribalism, unfortunately, I think is a delusion that undermines the truth, is that we are a nation that has common pain, but our politics don't serve us to coming together around common purpose. This is an area that we have common purpose on. This is a substance that should not be Schedule 1. It should not be scheduled at all. Now, we've had 2 presidents in a row, as you were saying, from Donald Trump's tweets to what the President of the United States talked about rescheduling, and created a process that I believe was slow-walked before he got out. But I'm so frustrated that I just want action in the federal level so that we can get this stuff scheduled correctly. And if not, I'm telling you, I'm liable to be on another presidential debate stage making fun of another person that's unwilling to do it.
Well, I like the idea of you on another presidential debate stage, but that's for another day.
Okay.
But, you know, you and I shared a moment a few years ago when you were running for president, actually, when we had dinner at Governor Murphy's house. And my Susan talked about the loss of her daughter.
Yes.
Who, I know she won't mind me talking about it because we've talked about it before, who died of a fentanyl overdose. But when she was able to use cannabis, didn't have the desire. And we are both convinced that if cannabis, and this is unfortunately, medical cannabis being legal in PA and Jersey, but had she been able to use it, she'd still be alive today. So not only is it about the very important question of social justice, but it's literally about lives. And how do we convince your colleagues that every day we don't get to rescheduling, and I purposely use rescheduling versus descheduling because of the significance, okay, that people are dying. We're losing people. And, you know, I remember I met some parents of a child that had Tourette's, and it was changing his life. How do we get, at the end of the day, I still believe that the 100 people you serve with and the 435 are still human beings. How do we get to them, not only their minds and their hearts, and let them understand that delay is literally killing people or not allowing people to have a quality of life that God has given them? How do we get that message to them?
Well, I mean, the hypocrisy that we see in our country right now is that we are blocking scientific study, open and abundant scientific study of not just marijuana. I'm one of these people leading to relax the overregulation of hallucinogens and many other products that we're seeing are really helpful to people who are going through trauma, for people who have PTSD, of some of the people that should arouse the greatest empathy in our country, like our veterans. And you can't be against science. You can't be against facts. You can't be against knowing, human knowledge. And so again, this should frustrate any American who just wants truth and objectivity to guide our policy. And we've now had a policy based upon fear-based, Nixon-era, race-based, in my opinion as well, propaganda, and not the truth. We should be pursuing truth as a country. We say it, truth, justice, and the American way. Now, you asked me how do we deal with it. The direct question was, what do we do? And I look to all of you. We are still in a democracy. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. But the people have to use their power. And so, as long as it's still we the people, then we have to begin to exercise our powers as citizens of this democracy to demand, to work for, to push for, to fight for, to lobby for the kind of change that makes sense. Not just for our business interests. I'm a big believer in capitalism and the philosophy of a moral philosopher named Adam Smith. But it's not just the pecuniary interest that should be pushing us to do this. And if we are in the industry, we should be investing in the kind of political change, because there's a lot of very powerful interests that don't want you to succeed. There's a lot of powerful interests that lobby Congress for the other side. But it's also just the sheer urgency of the justice of all of this. And so my hope is that we tell stories. My father was this great salesman who said, you know, statistics tell, but stories sell. Stories call to the hearts of people and the emotions of people, not just their heads. There are thousands and thousands of stories in every community in this country about how our broken marijuana laws are making people unjustly suffer suffer in real substantive ways, from healthcare to the criminal justice system to economically suffer. People in my city who have criminal convictions for doing things that my classmates at Stanford did, who can't now, because they have a criminal conviction, get a job at a McDonald's, for crying out loud. They are suffering. Families who have children who are suffering from Gervais syndrome or Tourette's, who can't get access to the kind of medication that can help them, are suffering. These are real stories that I hope call to the conscience of a country to stand up to do more. That's going to help grow our movement. And we have tools now that civil rights activists and others who are artists of activism, who expanded the moral imagination of a nation, we have tools that they don't have. So on our social media and our digital platforms, we need to be elevating more of this truth to create more of a movement to rationalize our marijuana regulation on a federal level and liberate economic potential, liberate health and well-being, liberate a country right now that is still struggling under laws that should not be under the books.
So Mitch McConnell, a week or so ago, used his power to really come after a segment of this industry with respect to the changes in the Farm Bill. And as a consequence of that, and I know there's going to be a one-year runway for people to figure their way through, but many farmers and folks who made part of their life decisions on employment or businesses may have their legs cut out from them. And I can't imagine that Mitch McConnell, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I can't imagine he understands the concept of one plant or cannabinoids. I mean, I just don't know that it went to that level. Do you have any insight as to the likelihood of being able to either revisit it or bring some common sense national regulatory scheme as a result of what happened
Yeah, I mean,
recently?
it was a dark and painful night. I'll be honest with you. I voted along with, to watch these two senators from Kentucky, I voted along with Rand Paul. But to see one senator, after just seeing a hint of what the economic potential of the deregulation could be, seeing a hint of the kind of industry and jobs that could be created if we regulate it right, and we weren't regulating it right, but to see him be able to thwart all of that was very frustrating. So again, I'm a prisoner of hope. I'm hoping we can do something to thwart what he was doing and get back to some kind of systematic regulation. But this is why it's so good that you all are in DC, because we just need more activism from industry and those who have economic power and influence and can help us to push back on this during this course of this 1 year where that legislation is going to take effect.
Midterms are coming up. There was, and you know, I was a former Democratic official. I was, so I show that bias, but and it was a good night for Democrats, just like 2 years earlier. It was a good night for Republicans. Do you have any sense as to whether there's going to be, has there been any discussion, maybe is a better way, among Democratic candidates for the Senate and the House as to whether they're prepared to take a more aggressive position? Do we know if there's any part of any national discussion with the DCCC or the DSCC of getting recruiting candidates who would be supportive of our industry? Do you have any insight on any of that?
I don't have much. I tend to see, and again, this is not a partisan issue, but I tend to see Democratic candidates being far more progressive in terms of their willingness to create to support the kind of legislation that I've either written or am a co-sponsor of. So I'm hopeful that should we be successful in the midterms, and especially in these next two cycles, if the White House has a Democratic president and House and Senate controlled by Democrats, I seem to suspect that we'll be able to get these things done and a lot easier, because there's enough Republicans in the minority, like Rand Paul, frankly, that would stand with us to get the 60 votes to get one of these larger bills like safe banking across the line.
There is a bill that was introduced.
And it's generational too, you know this. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if we.
That speaks to Biden, Frank, with all due respect.
I honestly agree. He came of age in a much different era. And again, the greatest generation and baby boomers, God bless them. I mean, they're the story of those generations from reproductive rights with Roe v. Wade, civil rights, to the greatest generation, which we already know they earned that moniker. My generation X and millennials and Z, we have to redefine this country. We're more digitally native, we're more open on this issue, and the page is being turned in Congress. You have baby boomers. This is the last baby boomer president. These are the last baby boomers heads of the Senate. I know generational will change, but I would imagine if I asked how many people think we can wait until all the baby boomers, everybody here would say we're not waiting, Cory. We need this change now.
There is some legislation that has been sponsored by one of your colleagues, I think, that's talking about a national scheme with respect to regulation, cannabis opportunity, or
this is one of my bills. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, good. I didn't do my research
Cannabis
completely.
Administration and Opportunity Act. Yes.
Okay, so talk a bit about how that weaves it all together.
Yeah, I'll take safe banking. You know, it's a reason why I've endorsed this bill. It's really important. I know it's vital for a lot of people here who are trying to create economic opportunity. But the CAOA is a comprehensive bill that deals with every aspect of this, from the criminal justice aspects of it, from the science and research acts of it, going back to the criminal justice, just the expungement aspects of it. Like, it's absurd to me that somebody who 15 years ago has a criminal conviction for nonviolent marijuana use is now banned from that industry. So from the treatment aspect, it's just a much more comprehensive, common sense, evidence-based approach, and I'm really proud of that legislation.
And this wraps up where we began, and thank you so much for taking time. And by the way, he is in the midst of, because he's in the leadership and he has a leadership meeting, I think at 5 o'clock, so we were able to pull him from the Senate, and he's come here, notwithstanding the fact he's got to go back to work. But when I first introduced you, I spoke about the fact that you had a unique ability as mayor to bring the commonality together of oppressed community, part of the community, people of color, people who have were not in any way represented in the city of Newark, not in any substantial way. And yet the business community gives significant comfort to the business community to follow you. What we need in this industry is, and I'm putting you on the spot a bit, taking advantage of our 25-year friendship, we need you to be an advocate for not only those folks who need you in terms of social justice, and they do. They need you to deal with expungement. They need you to have opportunity in this industry. They need you to have some type of step up because they've had so many been down. And we also need you as the business industry needs you, because right now there's about 400,000 people employed in this industry. It could be millions if we made the next couple of steps. So what I'm asking you in front of all of these 300 or so witnesses, and this is the biggest crowd that we've had all day, is please help us to, with your legislation, with your voice, with your heart, with your soul, be the leader that we need for this industry. And if you do so, we will not only be appreciative, but we will be with you every step of the way.
So let me just say this to everybody in this room. You all are Americans to me that represent the best of who we are. I don't care who you are. The bottom of Maslow's pyramid is always going to be the things that I try to get my party, and again, I'm more of a patriot than a partisan. I want this country to be about every aspect of Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs. But the bottom of it, the most important thing for a successful nation, is that every citizen has safety and security for their families and has pathways to prosperity for their families as well. That's the bottom of, that is at the heart of the American dream, that this is a country that's going to keep families safe, strong, and prosperous. And you cannot do that without entrepreneurialism. We are a nation as great as we are because of innovative people who are willing to risk capital, invest their sweat, hard work, and equity into building this country to be the best place in the world to live. Now, that was the truth of my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation. I am here because of gritty people like you in my family that opened up the door to the middle class. For my grandfather was born in the Deep South in a very violently segregated time and moved up to Detroit, Michigan, and got a job on the assembly line. But like so many of you who have worked full-time jobs and still invested in an entrepreneurial endeavor, that's what my grandparents did. They were opened up a laundromat and a pool hall in Detroit and a gas station. And then I can confess this to you all now because some of you are in businesses that the federal government sees as illegal. I can tell you the statute of limitations is up, so please don't come after my family, Cash Patel. But my grandfather ran numbers. That's what the stories say before the lottery was legit. Okay? That's the story of America. My grandparents are the Jeffersons. By the time I was in college, they had moved on up to a deluxe apartment in the sky on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. They were entrepreneurs. My grandfather bought property and flipped it. They were hustlers. We are here because of American people who hustled, who found opportunity, and who expanded this country to be the most prosperous place on the planet Earth. Now, I have a lot of strong beliefs. I think our tax system sucks. It doesn't reward entrepreneurialism. It benefits big, concentrated corporations. I can go through all that stuff for another day. But my point to this brilliant, beautiful friend of mine who's been there for me for 25 years is simply this. You all are the good guys. What we need to do is create a regulatory system where you can thrive in an industry that, yes, should be creating millions of jobs and more pathways for prosperity for more gritty people who have the guts to continue in that entrepreneurial spirit. That's what we want. You all are the patriots right now. We are the patriots trying to create a more robust economy that serves those fundamental human needs of safety and prosperity. So I promise you this. I'll be hopefully in a room with you all, hopefully a year, hopefully in this Congress. But we are going to win. We are going to win because America always has won. You all are betting on America. You're investing yourself in an area that does not have a regulatory regime yet. But I am telling you, I'm going to fight in every way to make sure that those people who still believe in America and still bet on America win. Thanks.
I'll take that as a yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get it one more time. The senior senator from the state of New Jersey, my friend Cory Booker. Thank you, Senator.